I told, okay, um, let us begin. We're going to speak about um, halachas of Sfiras Omer. That's what we'll do this week. And then maybe next week we'll discuss some of the practices that people have um, during the Omer, like not shaving and other stuff, which are about Avelis in the morning period. But this week, what we'll do is just we'll talk about the different halachas in regards to actually counting the Omer. So we'll start off by speaking about that. It's the mitzvah to count the Omer, and the mitzvah to count 49 days from the day they would bring the Korban Omer, which is the 16th of Nisan, and it's the second day of Pesach. So we count 49 days from then until Shavuos, um, from the 16th of Nisan. So the pasuk says, and this is based on a pasuk in the Torah. It says, "Uspartem lachamim macharas hashabas yom aviachem es Omer." You should count from the day they bring the Omer. Shava Shabbatos to Mimos and you should count 7 weeks. So it would it would it would seem from the fact that there is a pasuk, from the fact that it's written in the Torah, that this would be a biblical commandment. The Torah tells us you need to count the Omer, and that's how the Rambam paskins. He says that indeed this is a biblical commandment. It's a deraisa. Um, However, this is not agreed upon by many, and many poskim disagree with the Rambam and say nowadays this is only a rabbinical obligation, because we're not actually bringing a korban omer anymore. So we're just doing it as a zecher lemikdash. We're doing it to remember based on mikdash, that in the base of the mikdash they would bring this korban. Now it's a rabbinical obligation. Okay, so maybe it's rabbinical and maybe it's biblical. Maybe they're right, so maybe they're abundant. Why is that? Why is that relevant? So that's relevant because we have a rule in halacha that anytime we have a doubt, anytime we have what's called a safek, which means we're not sure. So the rule is safek on a deraisa. If we have a doubt on a biblical halacha, so the rule is safek deraisa lechumra, which means we have to be machmir, we have to be stringent. But if we have a safek on a derabanan, safek on a doubt on a rabbinical law, if the rule is safek derabanan lakula, we can be lenient. So that becomes relevant during with the halachas of counting the omer. Most notably, we'll get to later in this year. But can you count maybe earlier in the night? There are different periods of the night, and maybe you can count before stars come out, before it sets, because of this reason. So we'll get to there later, but it's just important to introduce the topic in that way, is that perhaps it is a biblical obligation, perhaps it's deraisa, or perhaps derabanan and rabbinical. Women are exempt from counting Sfiras Omer because it's a mitzvah aseh shetman grama, which means it's a positive time-bound mitzvah, because we only say it at a certain point in the year, right? This means it's time-bound. Although Magen Avram says that nowadays it's basically women have taken upon themselves as an obligation. But the standard, I think, is that women technically are not obligated, but it's still a mitzvah. Why would someone not want to do a mitzvah? So if some places they have the women have the custom to count, other places the custom is women do not count. But if a woman is counting the Omer, so would she be able to make a bracha? So this is also a debate, and it would seem to be a debate between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. So you would think, why can't a woman say a bracha? So Ashkenazim say they can make a bracha, but the Smag, he raises the issue, is that let's say a woman's not actually commanded in the obligation because it's a time-bound mitzvah. So when we say a bracha, we say the word vitzivanu, Hashem commanded us. So if women are technically not obligated, and they technically were not commanded, then how can they say the bracha and include the word vitzivanu? That God commanded us. If God didn't actually command women to count the Omer. So the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, they say that indeed, so that women should not say a bracha. Um, and so some Sephardim have that practice. However, Ashkenazim, they follow Rabbeinu Tam, who's one of the Bali Tospos, and he said women should say a bracha even on a mitzvah saseh Mount Grama. It's a well-known opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. It comes up in regard to in regard to lulav in the Gemara in Sukkah, I think. So how do we answer our question though that if they're not actually commanded in doing the mitzvah, how can they say the word vitzivani, which means that God commanded us to do it? So there's a couple of answers. The Ran explains because even though they're not actually commanded, they still would get a reward if they indeed did do the mitzvah. So they can still say vitzivani. The Ritva explains because women are still part of they're still part of Bnei Yisrael. They're still Jews. So since they're part of Bnei Yisrael, they can say it. And so there are even some Sephardi poskim, the Chida, and the Chamed, they say that even Sephardi women should also say with the bracha. Rav Ovadia thought it was better for Sephardi women should not say with the bracha. So at the end of the day, Ashkenazim, the practice is that if a woman is counting the Omer, which she should count the Omer with the bracha. If you're Sephardi, then you should probably ask a rabbi what to do. The halacha is also that when we count the Omer, we do it while we are standing. That's brought by Shulchan Aruch, and the Mishnah Berurah explains though. Let's say you counted the Omer and you forgot to stand. Does it count? If it's okay, it still counts. And this is based on the Rosh and the Rambam. They bring this that the pasuk says that. Okay, so it's be hard to follow if it's not in front of you, but we'll try to make it clear that the pasuk tells us Shiva Shavuos Tisborlach, you shall count 7 weeks. Me'achel chermesh bakama tachel lispor Shiva Shavuos, meaning start to count 7 weeks when the sickle is first put to the standing grade. So that's me'achel chermesh bakama tachel lispor. So they take 3 words in there and they kind of separate the comma and focus on the words bacham. It says me'achel chermesh bakama. That means when the sickle is put to the standing grain, tachel lispor, you start to count. So they say just take that last word bakama and put it with tachel lispor, meaning and read that word as bekoma while you are standing, and meaning bekoma tachel lispor, count while you are standing. If you didn't get that, it's okay. But basically, they learn from this pasuk that you should count Omer while you're standing. The Aruch HaShulchan explains based on the Zohar, based on the Kabbalistic idea that counting the Omer is like this big deal, and he compares it to even like the Shemona Esrei, and so that's why you would need to stand while you count the Omer. When do we count the Omer? In the night, we usually count it after Mariv. So this is also interesting that the Bir Halacha, he brings 2 ideas why we count it at the end of Mariv. Because you might think that you should count it at the beginning of Mariv. So he explains, first he brings from Mor Ksiya, of Yaakov Menden, he explains that we count after Mariv because it used to be they would always dive in Mariv a little bit earlier before it actually became nighttime, while it was still light. And so as Mariv was ending, that's actually when it became nighttime. So they didn't want to count in the beginning. They said it's better to count at the end because we'll talk about later that you should count when officially becomes night. That's definitely better. But he brings another opinion, which is that from the Chaluk Yaakov, that he says because we have a concept in halacha that tadir rishenu tadir kodem, which means if you have something which is common versus something which is less common, what do we do first? We do the thing that is more common before a thing that is not common. So he explains that saying Shema and saying Shemona Esrei, we say 3 times every day. Count the Omer only 49 times. during the year. So which is more common? Shema and saying Shemona Esrei are definitely more common. So they come before the counting of the Omer. Um, so that's and the Mishnah Berurah says that we count before we say Aleinu because any way which we can count earlier after nighttime is better because we want to count tamim. This is based on the pasuk that said you should count it. The week should be tamim, which means like pure. And so Mishnah Berurah says we should basically have counted as much of the night as possible. So we count before we say Aleinu. So the question is, I just told you there's a rule. What's common? Tadir Rishinu, Tadir Kodem, right? What's common versus what's something which is less common. The thing that is more common comes before the thing that's not more. Sorry, the thing that's common comes before the thing that's uncommon, right? So if I'd asked you which is more common, counting the Omer or saying Aleinu, you would say Aleinu is way more common. We see that twice a day, three times a day. So why? How come this rule doesn't follow? And we count the Omer before we say Aleinu. So I asked this question in yeshiva. I asked for Sobolevsky, one of the Rosh Yeshivas at YU, and he told me the Shagis Aryeh says the rule of Tadir V'Sheinu Tadir Kodem, the rule of what's common takes precedence, is only true about mitzvahs. You only say that about when you're doing a mitzvah. So saying Shema is a mitzvah. Saying the Shemona Esrei is a mitzvah. But Aleinu, that's not a mitzvah. It's a rishus. It's a voluntary. So that does not apply. So that's why it would not follow this rule, and you count the Omer beforehand because it's not subject to this rule. They bring some opinions from the Vilna Gaon and the Kaf HaChaim that some say it's still better to count after Aleinu because you don't want to mess up the order of davening. Whatever the minhag, people have different minhags, so you should follow the minhag there wherever you're davening. Okay, what about counting in the day? So Shulchan Aruch says if you forgot to count at night, then you should count in the day and don't make a bracha. The Mishnah Berurah explains because there are opinions that you can count in the day, you forgot in the night, which is based on the broader opinion of the Bahag, because it's a very famous opinion that you can count even during the day. So really you're supposed to count in the night, and since there's machlokas about counting in the day, we say count during the day and just don't make a bracha. Let's say if you're unsure, did you count at night? Do not count at night. So then you should just count again in the day. I think at the yeshiva, my father always will make sure we count again in the morning, just in case you forgot at night. Right? I think it's just a good idea. And in the morning, just make sure you say it just in case you forgot at night. And then, as we mentioned, if you forget entire day, you can't count anymore with the bracha. So, and one can count in the day up until the time of shkia, time of sunset. So this is a big question that I think is very common. Let's say you forgot to count Sfiras Omer on Thursday night, and then you only remembered before sunset, but Shabbos starts so late, you want to take early Shabbos. So you took Shabbos after Plag HaMincha, which is still before sunset. So you still technically you still have time to count the Omer, but you already took Shabbos. So can you still count on Friday, or is it too late? That's a famous question. So this is discussed by Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe, he compares this to a situation that the Taz discusses. That let's say this was the case that this congregation, they didn't have a shofar available to them on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was Thursday, Friday. So they didn't have a shofar for them on Friday, Thursday or Friday. Rosh Hashanah was ending. Late Friday afternoon, the congregation said they're going to accept Shabbos before sunset. They're going to accept the plug, and then after they accepted Shabbos, someone comes running with a shofar. So, do we say do we say that the shofar can no longer be blown because accepting Shabbos brings Rosh Hashanah to a conclusion? That's the question. So the Taz says that you can blow the shofar, and he brings two reasons. He says, number one, because accepting Shabbos was a mistake, meaning had they known that a shofar was still coming, they wouldn't have accepted Shabbos. So therefore, the accepting of Shabbos was not a valid accepting of Shabbos. And reason number two is because accepting Shabbos before sunset has no impact on the shofar because it's still Rosh Hashanah. So Ramosha compares it. He says, but he says there's a big difference between those two reasons. According to the first reason, which is that it was a mistake. So if the person already davened Mariv, so you can't say that accepting Shabbos is a mistake, because then you would have to daven Mariv again, and all the davening that you said was just a bracha levatala. It was a blessing recited in vain. That's no good. You don't want to say that. According to the second reason of the Taz, if one daven Mariv before sunset, they can still count the Sphira for Thursday night for Friday, since it's still daytime, even though Shabbos was accepted. So it's dependent on which reason of the Taz. So Ramosha says that the second reason is more compelling, and therefore says Ramosha one can count Sphira of Friday even after accepting Shabbos and continue counting with the bracha even after nightfall. So that's the opinion of Ramosha. And hopefully we don't get into that situation, but if we get into that situation, you can remember Moshe said it's okay. The Shulchan Aruch also says, and Mishnah Berurah says as well, that a person should count themselves. And sometimes like when we listen to Kiddush, when someone or Havdalah, we're able to just listen to someone make it. Someone make the Kiddush, someone make the Havdalah. Not every person needs to say it for themselves. But when it comes to counting the Omer, Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah say that a person should count the Omer for themselves, and this is based on the pasuk. It says, "Uspartem lachem," count for yourself. You should make sure to say the word and count the Omer for yourself. Yeah. So yeah. What if you counted the wrong day? So if you said the wrong day when you're counting, you have not fulfilled your obligation. Seemingly, you would even need to make a new bracha and count again. But if you remember Toch Kedei Dibor, which means like literally within your words, meaning like you said today is this day, right? And then you're like this day instead. So then that would be okay. You would fulfill your obligation because you changed it so that you corrected yourself right away. So Mishnah Berurah says, even though we mentioned earlier that every person should make the bracha and count for themselves, if one can't make the bracha for whatever reason, like let's say for example he missed a day, he can't make the bracha anymore, then he should listen to someone else make the bracha, have in mind to fulfill his obligation, and then count. He can still count himself, right? But he should listen to someone else and make the bracha because he can't make the bracha anymore. And the Shar Tion says that one who's making the bracha and the one who's hearing the bracha should both have intent that I'm saying the bracha for you, and the one listening should say I'm fulfilling the bracha through you. The Mishnah Berurah says that really, as you're making the bracha, you should know what day it is. Like, let's say you're making the bracha and you're like, I have no idea what day of the Omer it is. I'm just going to say the bracha, and then I'll try to ask someone. So that's not good. You should know as you're saying the bracha, you should know at least what day you're about to count. But even if you didn't, so we'd say you still fulfilled your obligation. It's okay. It's okay if you didn't. So this is a big discussion. So what happens if someone asks you, let's say you're davening Mariv, you finish Munas, right? And then they haven't counted Omer yet, and some guy taps you on the shoulder, or Chazan taps you on the shoulder and says, "What day of the Omer is it?" So that's a big discussion in Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch says, if your friend asks you at Beinish Mashos or at the night, what night is, and you have not counted yet, so you should tell him, last night was this. Okay, last night was, if tonight is 9, right? You say last night was 8, right? Because if you tell him what night it is, then you will not be able to count anymore with the bracha. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Mishnah Berurah explains. But this is going according to the opinions that say mitzvahs lav tzrichas kavana. I mean, there's a debate when we perform a mitzvah. Do we need to have intent when we perform the mitzvah, or maybe even if we don't have intent, we still fulfill the mitzvah. So Mishnah Berurah says that's a machloket. We're not sure. We don't know who's right. So because we are worried that maybe we still fulfill a mitzvah even if we didn't have intent. So once we said, right, tonight was mine, even without thinking the bracha, and even not actually wanting to fulfill our obligation, we still have to be worried about that we really did fulfill our obligation, and we can't say the bracha anymore. I mean, this is true even if you didn't say Omer at the end, right? So today is this and this day, Omer. And even if you said it in English, because both those ways, even if you say it in English, that would fulfill your obligation. B'diavad, meaning if it was done, it's not the best way to do it, but it would fulfill your obligation. So what if you did tell them the day? What if you didn't know this and you're like, oh yeah, tonight's night 9, and someone's like, what do you just do? So the Mishnah Berurah says you should count again with the bracha because we're also worried for the other opinions, right? Maybe mitzvahs really do need kavanah, and I haven't fulfilled my obligation yet, so I should count again and just don't make a bracha. Um, yeah, some say you can say even with the bracha, but I think the practice you probably don't say with the bracha. Yeah, so there's all these discussions, there's all these possibilities of when you actually would be able to answer, and actually say the day. But most everyone has a problem with every single one. They say like, it's what if it's after Plat Mincha? Maybe you can answer the day, but Shulchan Aruch says no, don't do that. What if you just say he says what's tonight, and you just say 9, and you say 4, you don't say 4 days. So some say that's okay, but some say no, that's no good. The bottom line is you should just tell him last night was this, right? Tell him last night was this, um, and then you're okay. What if the guy says it's 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 day 8, right? So if you answer yes, you think you're okay, but now the guy's not okay anymore. He can't say it with a bracha anymore. So so that is a big discussion there. So you should make sure to count the days and the weeks. This is all in the siddur. I recommend definitely using the siddur to count so you don't mess up. The Shulchan Aruch says count the days and the weeks. And the Mishnah Berurah explains this is based on the different psukim, the different verses that are in the Torah that says Tisbru Chamishim Yom, you should count 50 days. And also Shiva Shavuos Tisbru Alach, you should count 7 weeks. So we count days and we count the weeks. Mishnah Berurah discusses what if you forgot to count the weeks? Like what if you're higher than 7 and you forgot to count the weeks. So he says that I think he says b'diavad, meaning if it was done already, you're okay. But it's definitely not the best way to do it, and you can keep counting with a bracha. But if you forgot the amount of days, then you have not fulfilled your obligation. And if you didn't count that entire day, you wouldn't be able to count the bracha. But if you forgot the weeks, then you can keep counting with the bracha. The Magen Avraham says you should add in before you count. You should specifically say Hayom, meaning today is, which shows that you're counting. The Mishnah Berurah says that one can count in any language as long as you understand it. So technically one would be able to count in English, which is also probably a good idea because there's a discussion that what if someone doesn't actually understand Hebrew, so then they don't understand what they're saying. And this is a little bit different than other parts of davening because this isn't really like we're not really like davening to Hashem when we count the Omer. We're counting, right? When you're counting, you have to really know what you're saying, right? If you don't know what you're saying, then how can you consider yourself to be counting something? So some say counting in Hebrew is not sufficient because for exactly this reason you don't know what you're saying. But the Maharal Diskin says if you know what you're doing, right? Let's say you know what you're doing. I'm counting the Omer. You just and you know what number it is. right? You know how to translate that, or tonight is maybe you're saying you know what night it is, and but you just maybe don't know every single word of the bracha. You maybe can't translate every word for word, but you know what you're doing. So then it would still work. That would be okay. But if it's probably not a bad idea to count in Hebrew and then also in English if you don't know if one does not know Hebrew. Um, without writing or thinking the Omer. So most say neither of those work. Some say counting by writing works. Um, so you would count again without a bracha. Most people say not to do it. And there's discussion of like, let's say you wrote a letter and you specifically said in the letter, if you texted the Omer, probably just better to avoid those things. Mishnah Berurah says that the practice is to say Harach Haman, right? If you notice after you count the Omer, there's this little Harach Haman. So that the Mishnah Berurah explains because that we're asking Hashem that maybe that may be God's will that when we have the Omer rule that you have to actually bring the korban, because again this is not the real thing. It's just remembering the korban Omer that we brought. The next point is part of a bigger discussion, so I'm thinking probably best to just do it next week. Yeah, because this is a whole thing about counting early. Can you count early in the day? Yes, I think let's continue with this next week. See, it's 9:27, but yeah, sure. Does anyone have any questions?